Hello, Dr. Sari Brain Gal here, and I am excited today because we're going to talk about raising brains. And I know a lot of people have asked me, tell me about the book, what's in the book, and we've talked a lot about Franny and Amy G, and we talk a lot about behaviors and how kids talk with their behavior, and some of the basics to growth mindset and glow and grow charts. But we haven't really talked about raising brains from more of a biological standpoint today. So I thought I would show you some of what's in the book so that I can answer some of that question and give you some of the fun facts about raising a healthy brain, again, from more standpoint of what you can eat and what is good for brains. So I'm going to look at the Good for Brains chapter today and give you some little highlights because so many people have been asking about this that I thought I'd review it. So there's something really fun about knowing the biology of the brain and the science behind what gives our kids and us, by the way, the best shot to really creating these successful, happy, connected brains. So the better your performance is, right? We talk about this sometimes that is, we're really talking about Franny's performance. We're talking about the frontal lobe of the brain. And in order to be able to do that, think quickly and be efficient and perform better, we have to be healthy because everything that we eat turns into the chemicals that our brain uses to function. I'm going to say that again. Every single thing that you eat, that you consume, gets turned into these chemicals that our brain uses to function. They are called neurotransmitters. So we have cells in our brain that are called neurons, and they communicate in two ways. One is electrical and the other is chemical. And the chemicals are these neurotransmitters we talk about. And so if you were with me on Valentine's Day, I talked about oxytocin, which is kind of we call it the love hormone. That's what makes you feel so connected and so interested in people. And it's also what we can use when we give a hug, when we feel that kind of touch, that makes us feel good and healthy and connected. And we just have a question here. I want to better understand what brain chemistry impacts behavior. Absolutely. So the second one I was going to talk about would be dopamine. And dopamine is our feel-good chemical. It also helps us pay attention. So for example, kids with ADHD may have lower dopamine levels, and we want to increase that dopamine. When we are excited about something or when something feels good, we're going to get increases of dopamine in our brain too. And that's here in this chapter too, because we talk a lot about dopamine and oxytocin as well. And then we have serotonin too, which helps us see the world in a bit of a better light, in a happier light. It's kind of this more positive serotonin level, this chemical responsible for things like happy mood and our desire to make other people happy. So we talk about dopamine with satisfaction and, again, feeling good and wanting to do things again. Oxytocin, which helps to promote things like trust and love and bonding, is always a good chemical there too. And then serotonin, responsible for happiness. So that helps as well. When we use our behavior tools, just to answer this question from Facebook, what we're doing is reinforcing behavior so that we see it again and again. So anything that we reinforce, as I mentioned last week, we're going to see increase. So what we're doing is increasing dopamine to Franny, the frontal lobe of our brain. And that's why we get things that continue. If we negatively reinforce something, so still give attention to it, even if it's in a negative way, that attention can feel good. That will also increase dopamine. We'll see those things continue. So sometimes things like yelling and correcting our kids over and over again, we're still giving them our attention. That can still be a positive in a lot of ways when it comes to brain science. And so we're increasing dopamine that way too. That's why we talk about not giving attention for behaviors you don't want to see, because we would like to see those decrease, and only giving attention for the behaviors that you want to see. So that would be how the brain chemistry is going to impact behavior as well. Then things like lower serotonin levels may be associated with more depressive types of symptoms. And what we can give ourselves the best start by knowing these chemicals too, so that we can then increase our mood, perform better, things like that as we get into what we eat. So I'm going to go back to that because generally speaking, let's just start with glucose. So glucose is sugar, right? It's what our brain uses as power. So we need glucose. We need sugar, but we want to use better sugars. We want to use things that don't kind of give us this up and quick down. We want to use something that's going to sustain us. So this is why we say not the sugary sweets, not the white breads, the things that are going to go quickly because they give you kind of a quick bolt burst of energy with then a drop. We want to see things that sustain you more over time. Things like wheat breads, brown rices. Those are going to give you a longer lasting form of energy. So that's why we talk about those too. So when it comes to, I'll talk about foods more in just a second, but I want to give you some brain basics. So yes, we want to know how the chemistry is going to impact our brain, but first, we always want to think about a couple things just at baseline. So if you notice things going a little bit nutty in your house, if things are out of whack and they're not going consistently and you're having more and more trouble with your kids or with yourself in terms of behavior, this would be your basics list to go back to. The first is, has everybody eaten? Because as I said, glucose is what your brain needs to function. And if we are low on any food intake, you're going to see things like inattention and behavioral issues too, because the brain doesn't have what it needs to function at a high level. So is everybody hungry? If everybody's hungry, the next question is, how has everyone slept? Is everybody's sleep cycle on the right cycle? Is everybody getting enough sleep? Because we know lack of sleep will show behaviors similar to those with ADHD. And if you're either a new mom or if you've had those experiences of not getting a lot of sleep, you know that your brain feels like it's running on less power, that it can't connect things quickly, think through things quickly, and pull information very fast. So sleep is really important. Also, what happens during sleep is that the cerebral spinal fluid, which is the fluid that your brain sits in, goes through some cycling and it starts to clean things out. And as it cleans everything out, it kind of gets rid of the waste that the cells produce and really gets it ready for the next day. So you feel more comfortable, happy, confident. Your cells can run better. Everything is filed away and put in the right spot. And so we know that now we're ready for the next day. This is just like when you clean your desk off, which you can see mine is not particularly clean. But when you clean your desk off, you feel better. You feel like you can conquer more things. You feel ready to go. That's what your brain does during sleep. So sleep would be the next one. The third one would be exercise. So we talk about exercise for a healthy body, but I don't think we always recognize that it also helps your brain. It will produce growth hormones in the brain. You'll get different cellular development. It also cleans things out, gets things ready, and gives you this endorphin burst too. So you're also going to have some feel good chemicals that is going to help sustain you throughout the day too. So we talk about food, we talk about sleep, and we talk about exercise, but we don't always realize that those directly impact the way our brain is going to function. So the first three things on your brain basics checklist are going to be to check those things. And although it may sound simple, there's often times that we forget to go back to basics. And if there's ever a time in my house where I'm looking around, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, why am I having so much trouble with everybody? What happened? It's usually because we haven't gone back to these basics. So that's the first three things to check. The other one is structure and routine. I've talked a little bit about this before, but it's kind of a brain trick. So we have a part of our brain called the basal ganglia. I call him Mr. BG. You know, I always have names for everybody. But Mr. BG is deep in the center of our brain and likes routines and connections. When this, we often see this part have some changes from from more typical people. If you have something like OCD, an obsessive compulsive disorder, for example, that would be when that part of your brain is a little overactive, wanting to do things in the same way every time to reduce some anxiety. But in this case, we can use it to jumpstart performance by making things routine and making things happen consistently. This is morning routines, bedtime routines, after school routines. All of those are really helpful in helping the brain to perform better because it takes the questions out, right? Franny is always about what do I do and how do I do it? What do I do first? How do I problem solve? If you don't need to do those things because you have a routine, then Mr. BG takes over and Franny is there to be able to think and problem solve and do everything that she needs to do. So these are brain tricks. So having good routines and good consistency in the way that you approach behaviors, the way that you approach your kids' skills and building them, and the just the functioning of your day is really going to streamline and improve your brain performance a significant amount. So that would be your fourth one. So did everybody eat? What happened with their sleep? Is everybody exercising? And the fourth one would be needing more structure and routine. And then we have setting clear expectations, and we want to check out emotion as well. So getting clear expectations is really important. Kind of goes back with that structure and routine, because when kids know what to expect, then they're going to be able to meet that expectation clearly. And it takes out the guesswork to it. Franny doesn't have to work, right? So we want to make sure, do we need a light behavior chart? Do we need some stickers? Do we need something to reinforce so we get that dopamine going to the front of the brain for the behaviors that we need to see? Or are we doing okay? Okay, so hungry, sleeping well, getting enough exercise, structure and routine, and then clear expectations. Maybe we need to talk about a little light behavior chart. Remember when my kids were younger, that would definitely be the case. We'd start up a sticker chart again, wean them off, and then when we needed it again, we would jump back into it. And then the last thing is, are they struggling with something emotional, right? We've talked a lot about AG, and we know that we want Franny to be speaking, not Amy G. So the final one on this checklist is to double check and make sure that something else isn't going on. Remember, kids often speak with their behaviors. So when things aren't stable in the home, sometimes kids do behaviors that don't make any sense. I just had a family tell me the other day that something fell on the floor and the child reacted very dramatically to it when asked to pick it up. Can you pick that up? And, Johnny said, I didn't drop it. It's not mine. I don't know why you're asking me to it. It wasn't me. Somebody said it. And it was out of character for that child. That usually tells us that there's something else going on and this is the way it's coming out. And so when kids do that, they're typically telling you, I need some help, something's up, and I don't know how to process it. I don't know what I'm feeling, and I don't know how to express it. And that's when you use those brain detective skills we talk about to figure that out. So those would be your brain basics checklist. You can check them out here in the book if you're interested, or always message me if you have questions. So are they hungry? Are they sleeping well? Did they get enough exercise? Do you have the structures and routines in place? Do you need to set some expectations with the chart? Or are they struggling with something emotional there? So those are all your brain basics checklist. So remember that you can change the way your brain is performing by what you eat, right? By sleeping, by exercising. We have control over those things. So we need to do them ourselves. And we also want to make sure we're modeling those for our kiddos, because that's the Raising Brains method, right? That's what we want to do, is help our kids be able to perform at the best of their ability, give them that head start. This is particularly important for kids who have different kinds of diagnoses like ADHD or autism. We want to really give them every chance to have optimal brain performance. And then it's important also, of course, for any kid who really needs to perform well in school, especially in New Jersey here. We're just coming out of state testing week and rolling into the end of the year. So let's give our kiddos the best shot that they can to be able to completely attend to the end of the year. And if you're a teacher and you're going back and watching this, please eat, sleep, exercise, get those things in. I know they're hard to get in, but they're so important for you too, as you're helping all of our kiddos and you're raising all those kids' brains. So I hope that was helpful. You can always go back and watch it, go back and read it, or message me if you have questions. And thank you for asking a question live today. I'm always happy to answer them. Always love to. If you have follow-ups, you can always put them in the messages. I know we're on various channels here, so sometimes I get them in different places. I do always take a look, or you can message me privately. So nice talking to all of you today. Nice to see you, and good luck there out there raising brains.